We will then follow that with a vote for the 2019 Planning and Sustainability Commission officers, which will then be followed by the Albina Vision Briefing, the PED-PDX Master Plan Briefing, and the Bicycle Parking Code Briefing, with our goal to adjourn here at 2:45. So are there items of interest? Andre?
I would just like to offer my thanks and appreciation to Michelle Rudd. She resigned before the end of the year, and she was here for, I think, almost as long as I was. 7, 8 years. And she was had great insight, great comments, and was a diligent member of this commission, and will truly be missed. And I just publicly want to say thank you to Michelle and for all her efforts and being part of this commission. Thanks. And I know she's gone to another commission, which disappoints me that she would leave us and go somewhere else.
I completely agree with that. Thank you for giving that background, Andre. And you're still here, so you've got time left to outdo her term.
I've already eclipsed her term.
There you go. Other items? Yes, Katie.
Well, I wanted to make a request. Actually, I'm interested in the fact that the hiring process is going on right now for the Director of Planning and Sustainability, and I was hoping that as the commission we would have some involvement in it, and I'd like to find out what kind of involvement we could still have in it. Apparently, it's going along, and it's like halfway done or something. And I wanted to be able to ask some questions. I was hoping to be on one of the panels, but I am not. So anyway, I'm making that as a request.
Well, what I can add, Katie, is I am on a panel, and we'll be spending all day Monday on that panel. Mm-hmm. So if you have specific questions you'd like me to ask any of you, please feel free to pass those along, and I'll make sure to ask them for the commission.
That's great. One of the questions I do have is really actually not of them, but is there anyone on those panels that is representing East Portland?
I can't answer at all. Joe?
I don't know the specific. I know on the Stakeholder Committee, there are East Portland organizations that were represented in the draft list of members that I saw, but I haven't seen the current list, so I was just emailing to see if they could forward that, and I'll share it.
I would love that. Thank you very much.
Just one point is that I've sat on several of those interview committees, and the questions are pretty circumscribed, and you can only ask follow-up questions to the responses. So there's not a lot of latitude to go into anything off course from those questions typically.
Good heads up. Thanks, Mike. Any other items of interest or questions? Not seeing any hands up. Joe, Director's Report.
Yeah, just one thing, that the manufactured dwelling park zoning that was approved by City Council and then appealed to LUBA, the LUBA appeal has been withdrawn. So the applicant for that appeal has decided not to pursue that path. So that means the ordinance is in effect. The Fox Run map and the changes were adopted by City Council. So we're done with that. There could be other approaches that someone brings on appeal, but not through LUBA.
Good news. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is consideration of the minutes from December 11th.
Move adoption.
Second. Great. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Unanimously passes. Next item is vote for the 2019 Psc officers. As a reminder, Michelle was a vice chair, so we will need to kind of relook at the slate with that in mind. Does anybody want to make a nomination?
I will.
Andre. Kind of look to you. Was that a little obvious? I knew he was going
I would like to propose as chair Catherine Schultz, as vice chair Chris Smith, and as the other vice chair Eli Spivak.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Discussion.
Good group.
I assume they've all said yes already.
Speaking for the group, yes, we I guess have all put our heads together as to we're willing to take on those extra duties again this year. And I can say I'd certainly be honored to be chair again, and look forward to having both Chris and Eli's input on the officer slate. As a reminder, I would like to say, the officer meetings are open to all. The only thing that we really ask is that you let Julie know if you're going to be attending, so that we make sure we don't have a quorum issue. So I guess there's always opportunities for others to be involved in that process as well.
And I would just, for discussion, say that I think this is a great group of folks to take up the challenges for 2019.
Thank you, Andre. Any other comments? Guess not seeing any. Take the roll.
Baugh,
Yes.
Bortolazzo,
Yes.
Hauk,
Yes.
Larcell,
Yes.
Quinones,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Spivak,
It's an honor and a lot of work. Thank you. Yes.
Schultz.
Yes. So that also passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Next item is our Albina vision briefing.
Good afternoon. My name is Zari Santner, and I am a board member of Albina Vision Trust. With me is Tim Eddy of Hannover Eddy Architects, who have been a long-standing participant in a process that I will shortly describe. What we would like to do is for me to just set the context of how this came about and what we're trying to achieve, and then Tim would follow up with a more detailed explanation of the vision itself and the urban design aspect of it. We really appreciate your invitation being here, and at the end, would love to answer any questions you may have. Albina Vision Trust is a very small group of people consisting of, in addition to myself, Rukaya Adams, Michael Alexander, Tom Cody, and Greg Cantor, who were the founding to 20 other people 4 years ago was as a result of a series of conversations that were happening in the city about Memorial Coliseum, its fate, what it should be done there in order to energize that area. And a group of us, civic leaders without any stake in that area, thought that, as a community, residents of this community, we feel very passionate about the city, that we should come together and see if we can come up with an idea that hasn't been explored before. So we approached the Mayor Hales, then the mayor, and run the idea by him, and came up with a list of people, which included artists, developers, some property owners, and people involved in the culture of the city, educators, and architects. And he liked the idea. He said, the city has done a lot of work, but let's see what you as a group of citizens can come up with. And we worked with trailblazers, and they liked the idea and gave their consent for us to plan on their property. And the city encouraged us to, the mayor encouraged us to keep him informed. And in fact, he asked several bureaus, planning, Prosper Portland, transportation, to come and share with us series of studies that had been done in the past or were under planning or consideration at that time. So with the benefit of that, and a year of really getting very deeply exploring the history and the evolution of what had happened in the site, we began the process of sort of coming together and dreaming about what could happen on the site. So we call it Albina as a result. You know, we started as a rose quarter, but as you all know, this part of the city, which if you look at it historically, is between Steele and a little north of Broadway Bridge, which includes the area that Portland Public School holds up to about Tillamook, and then where the freeway ends up here somewhere and to the river. So it's a large area, about 93 acres. Historically, it was called Lower Albina and was part of the Greater Albina. And as you can see from this picture, it was like any other typical part of the city, with grid system coming all the way to the river and variety of homes, businesses, places of worship occupied this area. And then in the late 50s, in the name of various urban renewal and variety of other public works, the area began to change. And as this picture indicates, that the grid system that existed and really connected this part of the city to the rest of the east and northeast. So historically, as you all know, I'm sure you have heard this and learned about this, this was a very, very diverse community. It originally were occupied, well, obviously after Native Americans, but later on when the white people moved here, the primary people who lived there in the beginning were descendants of Volga Germans and Portuguese, and hence the name Albina. And later on, as the African Americans started migrating out of the South and towards the West, and especially during the war building ships, this area became a very, very popular residential area for African Americans. So there was a mix of a healthy mix of African Americans and European residents that lived there. And as you can see, the kind of homes that were there were very typical of a lot of other homes that existed in Portland, and there were, you all know about the cultural heritage of this area, was the lively cultural area for African American arts and music, and then the institutions that existed there. But a series of moves by the city in the name of progress and with the aim to improve access to downtown from then the airport that existed in Swan Island. The first move was widening of interstate that started to remove structures and residential areas to make room for interstate, and the middle picture shows how that ended up affecting the neighborhood. And then in the 50s, late 50s, trying to create room for Memorial Coliseum, and then later the freeway, all together basically annihilated a neighborhood that was very, very diverse. The combination of all of these projects removed more than 1,000 households from this district. And nearly half of them were African American. And that was really the center of the area where the African American lived. As you know, Broadway, Wilder, and Vancouver were the most active streets for a variety of businesses and cultural events. So this is what happened. And for us, as we discussed this history, we realized the impact of this was not just physical. The impact of that was the emotional scars that it created in a very important part of our community, which still lasts till today. And I am very sorry that a couple of our members, especially Rukaya Adams, whose family used to live here, grandmother used to live here and work downtown, could share with you some of the experiences that they had during that period and how they feel about it today. Unfortunately, I am not going to trying to speak for her, but some of these experiences and the feeling that exists among people whose parents, grandparents used to live this area really resonated with this group of 25 people. And we decided that this was not just going to be an urban design practice, that this was going to be a way of really healing our community, bringing our community together, and acknowledging the mistakes that were made, but look to the future together to create something that could never forget the past, but always look to the future. Okay, thank you. So after all of those that was done, this is what the city has in that area. There are 3 very, very major facilities that function, actually 2 of them at least, at this time function very well. Memorial Coliseum and Moda Center, they have events, and as you know, when the events happen, there are thousands of people, and they go in, and after the events, they come out and disperse very quickly, but in the intervening time, it's very quiet and desolate. And when we looked at this plan, we realized, why this place is so isolated. You can see the freeway has separated this area from the rest of the east side. We see all the infrastructures that are in place, interstate, and then the railroad on the tracks on the banks of the river, and all the TriMet work on the near Steel Bridge. And then most importantly, the location of parking garages that are positioned right next to Broadway has severed the connection of the south side of the Broadway from the north side. And Broadway used to be a street that was and still is a spine that goes across the river and then extends to the east. So having had that kind of information, we started talking about, okay, what do we want to achieve? We wanted to start with a set of values, and we discussed this at great length, and we came up with 5 or 6 set of values that, regardless of their urban design and architecture, we felt that we needed to adhere to. First was, it was going to be a place that people could live, work, and play. But when we say people, we meant all people. people of different socioeconomic background, different race, different creed, different religion. We truly wanted to revive that inclusive and diversity that existed in that neighborhood when before all the quote unquote improvements were made into that area. So that was our first and most important value. The second was we really cannot ignore the past. We need to acknowledge what happened and be honest about it, but use that to heal the wounds that have been created and bring the community, all the community together. And we explored rifts that had happened in other parts of the world. In Germany, when Germany was divided, in Ireland, and with all the upheavals that they had. And we tried to learn how did they reconcile all those differences and all the hurt. And we felt that we need to learn from that and reflect those in this area so that it will remain for the future generation to continuously to be reminded of it and learn from it. And one of the most important things was connection to the river. East Siders have very little opportunity to be connected to the river, to Willamette River. And this is an incredible place where we could provide that opportunity for all of the East Siders, not just for the people who will be looking and working together. And again, given all the impediments that exist on the site, we tried to learn from other places. How did they overcome the variety of infrastructures and obstacles to connect people to the river? So that became another very important value for developing this area. As I tried to explain, arts and culture was a mainstay of the community that used to occupy that area. And we wanted to make sure that the arts and cultural programs and events are part and parcel of this community, not just programmatically, but in terms of the products, but in terms of process as well. So, and given Portland's current ethos of valuing arts and culture, we felt that this is just like knitting the past and the future together. And finally, the value was that we needed to be intentionally remarkable. The community, the neighborhood intentionally was removed in that area or developed into something else. And we needed to be very intentional in terms of creating this community, this affordable, diverse community. But we also needed to be architecturally, in terms of urban design, intentional and aspire to the highest quality. So the remarkableness was both in terms of physical as well as the aspiration of community inclusivity. And in a nutshell, what we want to accomplish is that we want to really stitch back this area that has been isolated to the rest of East Side. As you can see from the little cartoon on the left, the community, it was a grid system and everything was connected. Then streets were removed, the housing were removed, and big structures were put in. And we see an opportunity to really create that network again, connect the East Side of this freeway to this area and build around it and create a community around it so that in the future, the big structures that are there, either they will continue to function as they are or could become something else that the community decides what it should be. So with that, I am going to pass it on to Tim so that he could get into a little bit greater detail for you.
Thanks, Zeri. So we were asked to work on developing a physical vision for a complete community to replace the community that had been swept away in Lower Albina. And what we first did was we really wanted to try to suggest a predictable future for that area, because as you look at it now, I don't think that there is a predictable future in its current state. And our first resources in our work were the North-Northeast Quadrant plan, and obviously that's fed into the 2035 plan and so forth. So the basis of much of our work was work that the Planning Commission set into place years and years ago. The area that we studied is 94 acres approximately, and bounded by the river, dipping down around the steel bridge, bordered by I-5, and then looping back north of the Portland Public Schools Blanchard Center. And one of the first observations that we made in terms of what the framework of this place should be based on long term is that the land along the river, albeit separated physically to some degree by the existing freight rail line, is the only significant parcel of land on the east side of the river that could possibly be dedicated to public park facility, to a public open space, a civic space that could be shared. We see that as a great opportunity. So in terms of reconnecting this place in the city back to the river, and quite frankly back to downtown in the central city, we saw that as a critical element. Establishing a healthy public realm based on functional public spaces, our observations that the public spaces that were created as part of the Moda Center development, the Rose Garden, Rose Quarter development, really don't function well as public spaces. This spot right here, just to the east of Memorial Coliseum, and bordered by the arena and the arena garage and the two garages to the north, was what was left over for public space after everything else had really been taken up by parking. And there are I don't think there are any successful public open spaces, plazas, parks, anything, anywhere in the world that are bounded by essentially vacant buildings and parking garages. So we saw that as a challenge to resolve. Spanning Northeast Broadway to the north and reconnecting these two parts of the neighborhood. Right now, you could almost say it's a bridge ramp all the way from the end of the Broadway Bridge to the other side of the freeway, because of the way traffic has been treated and the community has been developed in that area. And for us to be able to connect across, have a healthy community here, connect across to a healthy community north of Broadway, and to reintegrate Broadway as an important street from a commercial perspective, if you will, was important. And then stitching this district back into Northeast Portland across the freeway. The freeway creates a real gulf in there. So between Lower Albina and Northeast Portland and Lloyd Center, Lloyd District, and reconnecting this part of the city into the rest of the city. And so those sort of being the primary analysis points, we developed short and long-term development plans, part of trying to make this area more predictable. And the first thing we did, and Zeri mentioned it, was we looked at the two parking garages that are sitting here and the parking garage on the arena. And we realized that similar to the way the Lovejoy ramp cut off the Pearl District from the rest of the city years ago, that these parking garages really cut this district and the waterfront off from Northeast Portland, and that relocating that parking would be an important part of this effort. Understanding that the parking is very important to the viability of the Moda Center and the VMC, we worked with the Trailblazers who were on our team at the time to analyze how much parking would be needed in the future. At the moment, I think everybody imagines that we need about as much parking as we currently have over there for the current development, and would need probably additional parking to support additional commercial and residential space. So our first move was to create an open space framework that defined the waterfront edge as a civic space, and to define a major public open space that unified the Moda Center and the VMC in a way that would enable it to connect visually to Broadway and across to the north, as well as create potential development sites for housing, affordable housing, and commercial space and affordable commercial space, large sites around the perimeter of the district to basically frame that open space, as well as addressing the core of the district as another development opportunity with additional development, and then a development to the south knit in with light rail and so forth at the end of the steel bridge. Both A and B, both of these large public open spaces, are conceived in this diagram to have parking associated with them, parking beneath them. So the long-term vision is able to draw in the area north of Broadway, connect with linear green space into the Portland Public School site, and you can imagine very dense development on that side of Northeast Broadway as well. In the core, in the open spaces, you see civic and cultural facilities, the potential for those beginning to bloom at the waterfront, with the ability to have to memorialize what has happened in this area of the city on that location as well. Imagine, just as a placeholder, the Spire of Dublin on the edge of the waterfront. And then as we knit back into Northeast Portland, in our very optimistic view of the world, you can see I-5 disappearing under a freeway cap right here, and then reappearing down here. As a long-term vision, that's extremely robust, and it would be fantastic, wouldn't it, to be able to connect these neighborhoods, to have Northeast Broadway and Northeast Weidler be commercial corridors that stretch all the way through the city and back down to the bridgehead where they spring back across to the west side. Some interesting features. These diagrams are very diagrammatic, but this is the main concourse level of Memorial Coliseum. All of you are familiar with Interstate Avenue. You've probably driven down it or ridden your bikes down it. What you realize is that the main concourse level of Memorial Coliseum is approximately at the right height to span over over Interstate Avenue. And that the sites below on the Aegean lots, the old Thunderbird sites, actually drop down below the road, enabling the possibility of incorporating a couple of decks of parking in there. Between that area and the main public open space, the parking that's removed can be replaced in this concept. So what is that space at the edge of the river? Well, there's the potential for it to be a great front porch for the east side. Imagine that this may not even span over the freight rail lines below, but it sits far enough above it that you have a really great view back of the city. There's the potential as well to develop a connection to the water, not perhaps inspired by the work at the Seattle Sculpture Park in terms of how it deals with infrastructure and basically, as many of you have probably been there, as you walk through the sculpture park, the heavy traffic and rail infrastructure is below you and essentially out of your view in a very, very interesting way. But it's right there if you really look for it. So being able to integrate those things. In our planning, we didn't, we mindfully tried not to suggest major changes to the infrastructure. We tried to accept it as it sat because we didn't want to burden these ideas with that challenge. The worst burden that we've got, quite frankly, is parking. And for anybody involved in in real estate and development, parking is one of the biggest. Every project is a parking project. There's, when you look physically at the space between Memorial Coliseum and the edge of the river, the edge of freight rail, which would be running right past and quite a distance below, it's a big space, and it's a big opportunity for public space, space that shouldn't be privatized and space that should belong to the citizens of Portland. At the north end of that site, near the Broadway Bridge, we suggested that there might be a cultural facility. It could be a concert hall. It could work in concert with the VMC in its future lives. And you can see the idea of development beyond, as well as development in the core of the district, bringing people to the area. And then a spot for memorializing along the river. This is a view that we took from Broadway. So this is basically from the curb or the sidewalk on Broadway, looking south towards Moda across that large open public area that we see created. We really didn't want to get into designing these spaces. We wanted to suggest spaces and activities and things that might happen there that can be designed going forward. We see great opportunities in these spaces to create unique places for the city of Portland. Imagine the Rose Parade marshaling in this area as it starts its way around the city, and imagine it surrounded by dense, affordable urban development on the east and the west. This is actually a view taken from approximately the location of the Blanchard Center in the area north of Broadway, looking back to the south, and the character of development. You can imagine a linear park stretching through that space, and the idea that it too is a complete neighborhood. And this image again shows the entire study area, and in the context of the post office blocks, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And it also shows ambitious thinking about what might happen with the interstate long term. You see it disappearing here, and you see the community in the neighborhood, and Northeast Broadway and Northeast Weidler continuing through that district. So we've been working with ODOT and PBOT over the past several months, learning more about what's being proposed for the Rose Quarter Interstate 5 improvements, including the reconstruction of all of the overpasses. What's currently being proposed, and sorry for jumping around here, oops, I'm going to go back. This is the best view I have. What's currently being proposed is indicated here, which are these green blocks, which are shown as freeway caps. In this case, this portion is a cap, and this is on grade. But this is we're very, very encouraged by the steps that ODOT is taking to reduce the impact of the freeway on the community, in particular by capping. But we're concerned about the use that's being suggested here, and we're concerned about the configuration of the caps to some degree, and we're working with them to explore the possibility of constructing buildings on the caps to continue the neighborhood through, and changing the shapes of the caps to more accurately reflect the historic street grid, rather than being totally responsive structurally to the flow of the freeway below. Additionally, in the current proposal, these are essentially proposed as park spaces, which we are some concerned about. So in our proposal, what we've done is changed the shapes of the caps and proposed in these dark gray blocks that those would essentially be buildable sites. And rather than having small pieces of green space on top of the freeway here, we're suggesting that the green spaces really be programmed and consolidated in the neighborhood, and that essentially those streets across the freeway, to be as inconspicuous as possible, should have commercial development on either side wherever possible. And as you can see, we're crafting different shapes for these, and we're learning more. ODOT has commissioned some structural evaluation of their initial plans for this area, and we actually have a meeting scheduled with them later this week to discuss what they may be able to do. Our concern is that we don't want anything to preclude better, bigger ideas that may be coming down the road for this whole district, any decisions in the short range. So this is the one of the vision documents that they had put together a few weeks ago. And as you can see, it's at Williams and Weidler. You can see the bikeway, and you can see one of the large open spaces that they're proposing with buildings, future development beyond. We took another look at that, and based on developing more robust capping over the freeway, our sense is that this is what that could feel like instead. And we think it's a pretty profound difference. We think this is a direction that will lead to greater success for that entire part of the city. And it really is, it's a huge area. It's at the core of the city. It's directly adjacent to downtown. And it's one of the biggest opportunities closest to downtown that we have. It's got very robust transit in place now, and plans to make that more robust going forward. So this is on the current work at I-5 in terms of those caps and open spaces. This being development on the east side of the freeway, future development imagined there. And this would be if we were able to fill more of that in and connect it in a stronger way into the communities on both sides. And so I think we'd love to have the Commission's support to PBOT and ODOT in their efforts to further study potential solutions to that area, that to the freeway caps that really restore the city and connect Lower Albina back into Northeast Portland.
So just a few words. A core group of the original 25 people came together and formed the Albina Vision Trust. And our intent is to promote this idea, this vision, both in terms of values most importantly, the values that are embedded in this vision, and then some of the urban design and just the concept itself of affordability and a good architecture and good urban design and good public open spaces. And the other thing that, as Tim mentioned, we are doing is just we want to make sure that anything that happens, whether it's private and public proposals, that it does not preclude the achieving the goals and the ideas that are embedded in this vision. So we are working, hence our collaboration working with ODOT, because that's the first project that is happening there that could have significant impact. And I'm very pleased to say that after a year and a half of discussions trying to understand each other, that we are making some progress, and still is work in progress, but we are making some progress. And we hope that by the time that ODOT is ready to have their environmental assessment out for public review, that some of these ideas are included in that. And then we may have even bigger ambitions beyond these small gestures that we hope to become join any kind of venture to come up with catalytic projects to make this happen. That's it.
Thank you very much for taking us through all that. It's very exciting. I know there's going to be questions, so if you're open for it, we'd like to get going with some questions. I see Chris hands up, and then Ben, Jeff, Andre. Well, let's just go around. We'll go around the horn, and we're trying to keep this to 10 minutes at this point. So if we could.
Okay. Well, thank you for the boldness of your vision and your commitment to work on it. Obviously, there's a lot of public process that would have to go into developing an actual plan, but do encourage you to keep working, particularly with ODOT, to make sure we're not building things that preclude your vision. Would like to focus in on one little piece of that. If you could go back to your future state that crosses Broadway diagram. Thank you. That was it. So one of the features of the freeway project is the so-called Hancock-Dixon connector, which is, part of the intent behind that was to help open up the Blanchard site, the PPS facility, for future redevelopment. And ironically, it replaces Flint, which I think is part of the historic street grid. So we're taking out yet one more piece of the historic street grid. It's become clear recently that Hancock-Dixon will have I believe a 10% grade for a substantial part of its length, which means that it's not going to be much of a pedestrian or bicycle connector. It may work for autos and transit. I guess my question is, what does that do to your vision? And is there a better way to open up that part of this site that you're envisioning that maybe works better as a connector?
So
Can I jump in real quick? And could
sure.
you perhaps just, for those of us who don't know Hancock and Dixon, just point them out real
point
quick?
out.
Thank you.
So right up here. And we haven't studied the grade there in enough detail to understand what's going to be best. Downhill on a bike is great on 10%. I can vouch for that. So I'm going to actually flip forward to here. And so Hancock and Dixon right here. Here's what's currently proposed, which is a switchback bike ramp to achieve lower grades to bring you down here, which we're concerned about from the perspective that it uses up what is pretty much an on-grade developable site, fair amount of land. One of our naive assumptions was that, gee, this existing grade can't be that tough. We should be able to make it work, and at 10%, it probably doesn't. So I'm not sure that either one is the right solution, and I think there's going to need to be further study there.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to reconceptualize this to keep Flint with its more gentle grade and keep some of the historic street grid in the process, but still open up that connection to the Blanchard site.
It's possible. It's possible, something to look at.
Thank you.
Ben?
Well, thank you for your vision. I think this paints a pretty exciting picture of what could happen here by stitching back the neighborhood. Kind of big picture, a couple of questions in regards to the larger area. I understand that this area could be affected by the green loop, and if you have any thoughts
Yes.
on that, how that would tie into it. And actually, in this picture, you can see a little bit of the post office development on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And have you thought of possible synergies and how these two areas could play? I mean, it's a very interesting kind of proposition to have these two very large redevelopments on both sides of the river being so close to each other.
So it's really interesting. I'm going to talk about a plan that I don't have to show you that was that we basically set aside at one point. But the Clackamas overcrossing over the freeway is, I guess it's about right here, and then comes down. Our initial thought was that Clackamas overcrossing might be a place for the streetcar. And that we might actually be able to bring the streetcar through this neighborhood and then pull the Clackamas overcrossing through past VMC. And at this point, we actually at one point developed a concept for a ped bridge across the Willamette, not unlike the Tillicum crossing, without a smaller version, if you will. Which would have connected directly, made a really nice connection into the post office blocks. We elected for two or three reasons. One is that TriMet is planning another way to cross the river. That's one. The other is we didn't want that to draw too much attention from what we really see as the core idea here, which are the open spaces and the ability to create a robust development in the area. But the connection across the river is super important, and we're really trying to imply that here. These things are actually very, very close together, and so yes.
And in response to the Green Loop, we are extremely excited about it because this is a very, very important node that connects the two sides of the Green Loop. And we would like to, and we have been approached by planning staff to work together towards that. And we'd like to do a little bit more detailed planning, get it from 40,000 level to more 10,000 level. And we would like to work with planning staff to combine those ideas.
Katie?
This is really a beautiful, and a lot of thought has gone into this, and I find it exciting. There's one piece that I keep kind of coming back to, and I'm just not sure where it's coming from. Who's behind the planning effort that you just have done? There isn't anything about that in your documentation.
Right.
And perhaps a little bit about how much community involvement has happened up until now, and what the vision is in the future.
Well, great question. I have to say, a few people, about maybe half a dozen people, who were really frustrated by a lot of conversations that were happening about this area that were not really dealing with the issues that exist there in a comprehensive manner, as I stated in the beginning of our presentation. So we thought that, the problem was not Coliseum, Moda Center, or Freeway by itself. The problem was there wasn't a comprehensive look and plan for this area. That what are the things that could be done? And when things happen in the city, you're yes.
Just what people?
Oh, what people?
Yeah.
Well, there were about 20. I will tell you. There were two property owners. The owner of the East Saloon or East
Well, it's the
Annex, East Annex.
left bank.
Left bank. Left
Yes.
bank.
Daniel
There,
Deutsch.
there were Blazers. There were people at MODA, whose name is on the MODA Center.
Okay.
There were a couple of architects. There were a couple of developers. There were 3 from arts and culture communities. There were people from African American community, and there were people from Hispanic communities who were interested in these ideas and thought that they wanted to just work on this and see if something was possible. None of us, except for those 2 people and the city, we don't own land. We don't have any stake in this. So it was just really a community effort. And after we developed these initial ideas, then we started taking it out to the community. We had series of conversations with African American communities. We had held public meetings at the neighborhood, Lloyd Center, Elliott neighborhood, and then we have had opportunities in other more general settings to present this.
And you must have had some funding.
Private funding, primarily, yes, and some foundation funding, yes. No, nothing. The total was less than 200,000.
Oh, okay. That's a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to rush through and be quick so everyone gets a few minutes. One, I love the idea, Tim, that your firm has been engaged in adding some design and development expertise to what ODOT and PBOT are doing. It seems like if we're actually going to be able to cover the freeways. I hope the funding is sufficient, and I'll ask this as a question, is to enable you to continue to play that role, to continue bringing your expertise to what ODOT and PBOT are going to be working on in the coming years. Because it seems to me the covering of the freeways is, I think you said this, is the first major catalytic event project that could actually take this vision and move it forward a step. So one, I hope the funding is there for you guys to continue to play that role. That's a question. I'll come back, if I may, let me, the other, and I have a question that relates to when the stadium was proposed for Blanchard. And I don't know how real that stadium was, but let's assume it had some reality to it. My understanding was the Albina Vision people were not supportive, did not think the stadium belonged at the Blanchard site. And I asked that because it struck me that that could be an unexpected but a catalytic event that would, like covering the freeways, help move this vision forward. It might not have been what you thought of going in, but I'm wondering how you decided conceptually that couldn't fit. And the other half of that question is, my understanding is the Moda Center is apparently one of the oldest arenas in the NBA right now. So, and I realize with the passing of Paul Allen, this creates a lot of uncertainty perhaps with what the Blazers' role would be. But let's assume whoever owns the Blazers in 3, 4, 5 years says, we want a new arena. That strikes me as another catalytic opportunity. Would the same objections be raised by your group that you raised to the notion of, so I'm just trying to see.
Sure.
Capping the freeway, great first catalytic event. What do you think could be or should be or might be the next something that will bring resources and dollars to your area?
Go ahead.
First of all, in terms of having funding to work with ODOT on the freeway issues, we don't really. We are going around and begging and asking for small foundation monies or private sector monies. So, in fact, we have a web page. If you feel compelled, you can donate to this project. But fortunately, after a series of conversation, City of Portland PBOT actually has agreed that this part of this whole vision warrants more studies. So they have agreed to come up with some money to do that. So I want to commend them for that decision. So we will pursue that. So that's the first thing. Regarding the Major League Baseball, what we said to them was, great, baseball in the city, this location, But as long as you can build that facility, but also achieve the values and the kind of community that we foresee for this area, if you could achieve those with all the public spaces and stuff, we will support you. But if that would preclude creation of a community to the extent an affordable, inclusive community with all the amenities that an affordable community needs, we will be supportive. They were realistic. They realized that that was not achievable, given the size of their facilities, all the requirements that they had. In this area, they could not. So that was that. And regarding the Moda Center, in fact, one of our future plans, which we haven't shown you, shows Moda Center in a different configuration, not necessarily Moda Center, but another major facility for whatever purpose. The idea is it's not the size, it is the location and how they fit in that area. And in fact, both of them at their current location could be reconfigured in whatever shape or form, whether they're smaller, a little bit larger, and still exist. So we did look at that. And as long as we can create the kind of community that this area needs and should have, we will not have any problem with it.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't actually have a question. I just wanted to say I've been hearing from many people about you and Rakaya and others making these presentations, and I'm glad to see one in person. It's very exciting. I will say that Rakaya is not here. I was really intrigued at a affordable housing meeting with City Club, where she paired with a young woman from Washington, D.C., talking about affordable housing. She spent the first 10 minutes talking about the importance of reconnecting to the river in that area, and I'm glad to see this is consistent with that with that interest from that community. Anyway, great work.
Thank you.
Andre?
First, in the interest of disclosure, I will be working with ODOT on the lid. So I'm not under contract yet, but hopefully soon. Now, just to my comments, first, this neighborhood is historically African American. I only heard you mention African Americans twice that I remember. It is the core of African Americans and what they feel they lost and were displaced and scattered. And the value, what's there, I'm not sure, and what that vision looks like. But intentionally, you should have African Americans at the wealth creation, at the design, the public process, and all of that, not 25 people that are developers trying to redevelop and not provide that opportunity. It is absolutely important that if this is going to be a place where communities of color can come back to this community, that they are involved from the very get-go and in a very inclusive and absolute intentional manner through the design, the vision, and the building and whatever else of the owning of that. And that process, I agree with the values you talk about, but I don't see those in place in your group. And when you look at that, from my viewpoint, this is one alternative. There should be a lot of talk and public process, to Chris's point, that you look at how do you create wealth in the minority communities, especially the African American communities, and bring those opportunities back to that community in this area, because they're the ones that were displaced. And to have a memorial that is European and not even art that is proposed as African American seems to be a disservice to this community, saying that it's Albina, that the African American community has taken. So I think this is one alternative. It certainly needs a lot of process and a lot of inclusion, a word you used, to have a broader perspective. And maybe this is the end point, but I'm not a designer and certainly you don't want me to pick up a pencil, but it needs that inclusion and that intentional inclusion, because right now it looks like the same process that threw them out, the same people are excluding, not including.
So, may I respond to that? Apologize for not emphasizing that aspect of it. I think in articulating the value and what happened to that area, I was hoping to be very, very frank and open in indicating that there was a community that was very diverse, half of them African American who lived there, that were annihilated. The properties were annihilated. So we want to create an inclusive, something that represents that community. However, in terms of the vision, this is just an idea. We know that this is not going to be implemented. What you see here, the visuals, is just to give a sense to the community what's possible. We totally agree with you that there needs to be public process. There needs to be people who really have connections and feeling and history with that neighborhood, taking this and embracing this and pushing this forward. We just want to start these conversations that this area is ripe to do that. And most importantly, if you just plan it and let it for the market to develop it, you are going to get another Pearl District, another South Waterfront. That there needs to be the community that shepherds this idea. And even though at this point there is only 5 of us, and out of 5, 2 are African American, we have a leadership council that we have formed that starts to have a conversation. 5 members, additional members, 5 of them are African Americans. So we absolutely, wholeheartedly agree with your approach. And I'm sorry that we haven't done a good job to communicate that with you.
So I'm going to let this go for another 5 minutes at the most, if we could just keep it brief.
I agree with a lot of Andre said, especially around how this could be an opportunity for wealth creation for Black folks who have been displaced. I'm just interested in, I know there's not a lot of housing in this area, but it sounds like there isn't any housing included in the plan so far. Is that a possibility to include housing? I'm also interested in seeing, again, there isn't a ton of housing in this area, but the displacement risk for the surrounding neighborhoods, and if you will be looking into that.
Well, I think the plan, based on these renderings, we see more than 3,000 units of housing in that area on both sides. And our hope is more than 50% of it would be affordable. And not only that, but the businesses that are there are affordable. And our aspiration is that the Albina vision, it blossoms, it's able to bring resources from foundations, from other organizations to enable development like that to happen.
Eli?
Thank you. Just a couple quick thoughts. One is, as much as I have done a lot of housing and love it, in terms of parking match, it seems like office or daytime uses might be got a lot of parking there for evenings. Housing, we need housing there too, but that's also evening parking. You don't want to have the place be dead in the day, so that's just sharing the same parking spaces all day long. It makes a lot of sense to me. The size of the green spaces looks awesome and decadent, and needing commerce to have people actually use it. I get wary of large open spaces where nothing happening in them. And the last is just a process issue, which I just need to understand better. Is I can imagine ODOT here being, who's my boss here, ODOT? I mean, if on the one hand, they're starting to do their engineering, and there's interest groups saying to engineer this way or that way. I mean, so maybe you know about this more, Andre, because you might be getting in that position, but I just am unclear how ODOT knows what their parameters are for design. It feels like maybe we as a commission, or maybe this has already happened, gives them some ground rules that, okay, if you're designing this, what's their design guide criteria, and do they have it, or are they making it up? Thanks.
So I'm going to I know you want to jump in, but I'm going to add to what I want you to
sure.
address is it seems to me, just overall what I'm hearing and seeing, first of all, great work. It's a great start. It's a great conversation sparker to what Andre has kind of brought up, and to that point, how is BPS getting involved, and what does the community involvement plan look like going forward to move whatever vision ends up actually moving forward to the next stage? And is BPS playing a role in that?
So let's go to first the ODOT question. With the adoption of the North-Northeast District Plan, the commission here also had a voice in the facilities plan. So very early, the planning stages of the freeway improvement and surface street improvements with ODOT came through here and was shaped by the commission. And that facilities plan was where the idea of that we could even accomplish any level of capping got put on the table. At that time, and that was a number of years ago, the guiding or I think the conclusion was that they weren't going to be buildable because of the engineering costs, and it was concept level facilities plan, didn't go as deep as the analysis that they're trying to do now. So that's always been an issue that's hanging out there. Capping, big success. Improvement to the bike, ped, and streets, public realm, big success. Didn't expect to be able to get that. Removal and relocation of the ramps, big success, because it helps make a lot of the other plan happen. Then through the Central City Plan and the work that we did with the commission, we put together an urban design framework and analysis extensively for this area. And one of the things that's heartening about what Albina Vision's put on the table is this is very much responsive to the set of principles and guidelines and framework that you all put on the table with the adoption of the Central City Plan. The burying the freeway thing is a separate question, but the rest of it is consistent with it and takes it farther. So this is it made me feel that you grounded the area well in the criteria that you put out there that shapes it. And in that Central City Plan, you made clear that redevelopment in the Rose Quarter or Blanchard, any of this area, needs to be focused around community development, community benefits, and specifically for trying to do reparations for the loss of the African American communities experienced here over the year. You put that in the plan. So to a certain extent, the groundwork for an approach like some version of this, you already staked that ground for the city, and the city council is adopting the plan. What we're doing right now is going back through and looking at that sort of line of planning and decisions that have in the Central City Plan and trying to restate for city council and hopefully for the Portland Public Schools, which together own 2/3 of the land that could possibly be in this area, that if redevelopment starts to come, if their business plans for those two institutions, city and school, go to being redeveloped, our expectation is that it is this equitable development, community-driven approach that embodies a lot of these values. So you've already put that on the table. Just as you know, the way we do it is not as necessarily as communicates as clearly or as compellingly. As far as the ODOT project goes, part of the success of Albina Vision and PBOT is not resting on that previous conclusion about the caps and asking for another level of analysis to be done before we just roll it. This is an EIS process, so there's a public component. There's been pressure from the process to try to ratchet down how much public involvement and comment period it is. It looks like that's being stretched back out so that we can make sure that we do this soundly and explore what the possibility, or actually what the additional cost would be if you really want to go for more structure on top of the cap. And I think at the end, a lot of what you're seeing in here is really big infrastructure costs. And that's not to scare us away from wanting it as a vision, but there's a lot of money being that's going to take to deliver a vision, any vision for this. But the moves are kind of fundamental. Yes, there's a lot of money in parking. For something that's got the MODA and the Memorial Coliseum, there's going to be a lot of money in parking. This is a very clever sort of approach to being able to use that urbanistically. So I think we have it lined up to double check on the ODOT process, to restate our commitment to equitable development in the district, and to try to just let other issues play out, which is figuring out the lease with the Moda Center and the Memorial Coliseum, figuring out the relocation plans for Portland Public Schools. And that was longer, sorry.
It's okay. Much appreciated. Thank you. I think we could keep asking you questions for a long time, but we do have a tight agenda. Thank you for your time. I'm just going to wrap up and say, kudos to kind of forming a private entity or group to really run a vision forward. We don't see that all the time. I think obviously the next steps, as you're hearing from us, in our opinion, is really gathering or getting deep into the community and making sure that we feel there's an equitable kind of conversation happening about it. So good luck with everything.
And we invite any of you to join us
Great.
to push this forward as a private entity. So
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is the PED-PDX Pedestrian Master Plan. This also is a briefing. I apologize to those of you presenting. We will give you extra time if you will allow us to take it up, but we'll also try to keep you here in a brief time. Happy New Year. Good. So feel free to start while individuals are taking their little breaks, but I want to make sure we have time to hear everything.
Yeah, I'll get started. Hopefully we can help you make up a little bit of time. So first off, I wanted to say thank you for having us here today. I appreciate the agenda time. My name is Michelle Marks. I'm the pedestrian coordinator at PBOT, and with me today is...
Hi, I'm Francesca Petricolo, and I'm a planner at PBOT. I'm deputy project manager to Michelle.
Great. So thanks again. We wanted to take a couple of moments of your time and tell you all about PED-PDX. So PED-PDX is the pedestrian modal plan for Portland. We've been working on this project for about a year and a half. And we're here right now because the public review draft is going to be hitting the streets in a matter of a few weeks. And we really wanted to invite you to comment on that work as a body. So we wanted to take just a few minutes to orient you to the pedestrian master plan, give you a preview of the content so that when you review it, when it comes out in a few weeks, you have a little bit of context for what you're looking at. And I did pass around some background documents that I'll refer to as I talk through the presentation here. So before we get started with the content, just a little bit of orientation about the scope of PED-PDX and how that relates to the comp plan. So it's a little bit different. This pedestrian master plan is a little bit different than the bicycle master plan that was adopted back in 2010 with a lot of involvement from this commission. Back then, the bike plan was introducing new policies, new projects, whereas now we're really working from a brand new comp plan, brand new pedestrian policies. So the new pedestrian master plan, PED-PDX, really is implementing all of the work that you guys did really recently. So we're not introducing new pedestrian policies. We're not introducing new pedestrian projects. We really are implementing those new policies and projects. What the plan does, however, is provide some guidance and structure to one of the TSP programs introduced in the TSP, the Pedestrian Network Completion. And so I'll talk about how that works in a little bit. So that's why this one's a little bit different. So how does PED-PDX advance those long-range planning goals? The plan, you'll see, has a very, very strong focus on transportation equity from beginning to end. I know that's very important to the city and to this commission. So the intent is to increase pedestrian activity in Portland to address all of the goals, all of our citywide goals, health, climate, and to manage growth and congestion. And you'll see in a moment the pedestrian classifications that are part of our network are truly based on the comp plan centers and corridors that are kind of the foundational elements of the comprehensive plan classifications. So it really enacts those. We're also, of course, very aware that pedestrians are the top of the transportation hierarchy, and that's infused also throughout the plan. So what is PEDPDX? As I mentioned, it is our transportation plan to get more people walking in Portland, to make walking safer, more comfortable, to facilitate mode shift in Portland. And we have a very strongly worded mission statement that guides all of our work. This was crafted by and with our Community Advisory Committee, and I'll just read it out loud. I almost start every presentation with this. Through PEDPDX, the City of Portland affirms walking as a fundamental human right and the most fundamental means of transportation. PEDPDX ensures walking is a safe, accessible, and attractive experience for everyone in Portland by putting pedestrians at the forefront of city policy, investments, and design. And I think we have a plan that does that. So the way the content of the plan is structured is there are really three key pillars. So the first section is our pedestrian classifications. I'll talk about that with you in a moment. Then we identify all of our pedestrian infrastructure needs and prioritize them for investment within that network. And then finally, the last section of the plan is what we're calling our pedestrian toolbox. So all of our implementing strategies and actions, all of the cool new transportation related stuff we're going to do to make Portland more walkable. So I'm really going to focus with you today, largely due to lack of time, on the first two bullets. And I'll just briefly touch upon the last one, which you'll see in the public review draft. And I do, before we jump in there, really want to underscore the level and quality of public involvement that's gone into the public review draft, and Francesca was the primary architect of that. So we have, as I mentioned, had a community advisory committee guiding this work from beginning to end. When we initially released our solicitation for membership in our PEDPDX Community Advisory Committee, we were all a bit floored because we received 230 some odd applications for a 15-member committee, which I've been doing this kind of work for a long time. I've never seen a response like that ever. Go ahead, Francesca.
Over 260 applications citywide.
Thank you. So in response to that eagerness, we decided to expand the size of our committee, and we structured it such that we had representatives from all areas of the city and recognitions of the very different walking experiences that people have in different parts of the city. We strove for both geographic and demographic diversity, and we had folks representing various advocacy organizations like Oregon Walks and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee on that committee as well. So they've been involved from start to finish. We also worked with the University of Oregon School of Journalism to develop pedestrian walking stories, just to share with our fellow residents the different kinds of walking experiences that people have, not only in different areas of the city with different challenges and infrastructure needs, but also the different experiences that people with different abilities have. So we have folks with disabilities talking about what it's like to navigate the city, the young, the old, people from East and Center City. And those are on our PEDPDX website and have now been shared via social media and viewed, I think, over 25,000 times. So we feel like we've been really successful in creating some empathy among residents about people's different experiences in the city. We did also, at the beginning of our process, release a citywide survey asking Portlanders for their priorities in terms of where we should be investing in walking improvements and what types of barriers they see in their neighborhoods. The feedback from that survey directly guides our prioritization structure. I'll show you that in a moment. And here's just a map representing some of the feedback we heard. I did send you in advance our survey report, just as background reading, and you'll see when you review the public draft that this is directly informing all of the content. And we worked really hard to get that survey out to as many segments of our city as we could, including voices that we don't traditionally hear from. in our public involvement. So we worked with representatives from the community to translate the surveys in different languages and go out to community centers, and we compared all of our response rates to the demographics of our city citywide to make sure that we were hearing proportionally from the people we needed to. What we saw was that we weren't hearing in particular from the African American community like we wanted to. So in response, we held what we called a couple of our Walking While Black focus groups and worked with folks like Africa House. And I'll have to look to Francesca to tell me who else. But thanks.
Yeah, we should give the credit to Tosin Abiodun from our bureau, and also Irene Schwafferman, Irene Marion now actually, who led these focus groups with our Black African American communities to find their priorities, and then their feedback directly was put into our plan and the results that you'll see.
Thank you. In addition, we also held workshops with folks from the disability community and coordinated that with the Commission on Disabilities. And again, just in recognition of knowing that the tools and toolkit items that folks with disabilities might want to see us implement could be very different from what we heard in our general citywide survey. So we gathered that input. We worked over the summer, Francesca, primarily with our district coalitions on our classifications to make sure that they were right and passing the stiff test with folks living in all of these neighborhoods. And then, of course, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee has been involved throughout. So that's the lightning round of everybody that we've been trying to work with. Again, our intent here was to reach folks who may not always participate in traditional, open houses or committees or commissions, and I think Francesca's done a great job with that. So classifications. So like all of our modal plans, the pedestrian modal plan includes pedestrian classifications, which in aggregate we're calling our pedestrian priority network. And I just want to orient you to the structure of how we've developed this. So we've structured our classifications to reflect pedestrian demand. So those higher intensity streets and districts where we might expect or want to see more people walking, more pedestrian demand, more generators, more vibrancy, are higher in our network, and streets where we might expect less walking, less demand are lower in their network. So from top to bottom, pedestrian districts. This is consistent with the old pedestrian master plan, which also identified pedestrian districts. What we've done now is use the comprehensive plan centers to define those. Again, the places we want to see lots of people walking or are walking now. All of our centers are now pedestrian districts. Major city walkways. So in the past, we've just had one blanket designation called city walkways. We're bifurcating that somewhat to acknowledge that there are some arterial roadways, some busy streets where we have more pedestrian demand. Those, again, come from our comp plan. So our corridors and main streets where we know we have a lot of pedestrian generators, community uses, shops, retail. Also, we wanted to acknowledge transportation demand as generated by transit. So frequent transit streets, where we have frequent transit service, we would of course expect more people walking to access those stops. Major city walkways also include our high demand regional trails, like those along the waterfront, for example. And then city walkways are our non-frequent transit stops, so a little bit less pedestrian activity, and all of our other arterials and collectors and moderate demand trails. And then finally, neighborhood walkways. So we've not given pedestrian classifications to local neighborhood streets in the past, but we want to acknowledge that there are in fact some higher order local streets that we want to recognize, such as designated safe routes to school, such as neighborhood greenways, where we want to acknowledge that those are serving both pedestrians and cyclists. So that is the structure. This reflects not only the comprehensive plan, but what we heard in our survey. So we asked folks which kinds of places are most important to improve for walking in Portland. And among the top answers here, you can see 3 of them relate to demand that we folded into our structure. So streets connecting people to transit and bus stops, streets connecting families and children to school, so those safe routes to school, and streets connecting people to neighborhood commercial streets, so those those main streets and corridors. We'll talk about equity and safety in a bit. So this is just a map of all of those pedestrian districts and designations. Again, we took these to our neighborhood district coalitions over the summer to vet these and modify them with residents. And these are the maps that you'll see included in that public review draft in a few weeks. So looking forward to your comments on those. So identifying and prioritizing needs within that network. So my apologies that this map is a bit blurry, but what we've done here is identified on our entire pedestrian priority network where we have sidewalks existing on both sides of the street, so the streets in green, and where we have no sidewalks present on either side of the street, those streets in red. The streets in blue here are where we have a sidewalk missing on just one side. So we know where all of our sidewalk gaps are in that entire network. It may not surprise you to see some patterns emerging here in far East Portland and Southwest Portland. The need is significant. So while half of our streets do have a walkway present on both sides of the road, a staggering 32% of our busy arterials and collectors are missing a walkway on both sides of the street. That's a third of our arterial network with no sidewalk on either side of the street. So we've quantified that. We know that's about 350 miles of missing sidewalk. Using numbers for what it costs to build a sidewalk per mile these days, we're talking about a $1.5 billion gap. So we know we have to prioritize and get really creative here. Just to quantify our crossing gaps on that same network. So you'll see in PED-PDX when it comes out that we have established some new guidelines for how frequently we want to see marked crossing opportunities in Portland. And we've identified on the network where we have those gaps, those segments in red here. There are about 3,500 gaps in marked crossings on our arterial and collector network. That's a lot of crossings. So again, we'll have to prioritize. So a key element of the plan is that prioritization approach, and we want it to be data-based, and we want it to be programmatic and intentional because we want to make sure that we're delivering resources to locations with the greatest need first. We want to be proactive. We don't want to be reactive. And this is absolutely the most, as you know, the equitable approach. We don't want to just be answering phone calls. We want to make sure that we're going out to places that need it the most and aligning our spending priorities with our goals and objectives. So again, back to what we heard from the public, the kinds of places that are most important for investment. We talked about demand, but also equity and safety. So those are the factors we're using. So we analyzed our whole network, looking at the equity criteria that that are in the PBOT equity matrix as directed by the Office of Human Rights, which are race and income by census tract. So what we have here is if we've identified where on the street network we have the greatest equity concerns in the dark blue, those higher scoring streets 9 to 10, all the way down to the lower priority areas that are gray and green. We also looked at demand, so we took that those classifications we just walked through and just quantified them, giving a score. So more points to pedestrian districts and major city walkways, fewer points to neighborhood walkways, again, to reflect the number of people walking. So you can see those major city walkways in pedestrian districts are the dark blue here, and then those lower demand streets on neighborhood walkways in the green. And then safety. So PED-PDX funded a really robust citywide crash analysis, looking at every pedestrian crash in the city of Portland over the past 10 years. In an effort to identify the kind of roadway and driver and operational characteristics potentially correlated with pedestrian crashes. And the intent here is to not only prioritize locations where we've already seen crashes, but to get in front of them and be proactive and send resources to locations that exhibit those characteristics that might be associated with crashes. So our safety criteria prioritizes the high crash network in places where we've seen crashes, but also those risk factors. So combined, we're able to identify our high priority locations, our tier 1 in purple, tier 2 in red, all the way down to the lower tier priorities in blue, and cross-tab those against those needs you just looked at, and what emerges are sidewalk investment priorities, crossing investment priorities for the pedestrian network completion. So again, the structure here is PED-PDX is directly guiding investments for that TSP program, for the pedestrian network completion program. And in so much as we want to identify pedestrian priorities in those TSP projects within those 1 to 10 and 11 to 20 year bands that you guys worked on, we have that information to also feed back up. So those prioritized needs will guide the program, as well as the standard things like project feasibility and leverage opportunities. And we'll be applying those criteria every 2 years outside of the plan. So the plan itself identifies the prioritization process and criteria. We'll be applying fresh safety, equity, and demand data every 2 years so that the plan is staying dynamic and relevant. And then finally, as I mentioned, the second half of the plan includes what we're calling our Pedestrian Toolbox. So this is a set of what I think are really exciting actions and strategies, the things that PBOD and other bureaus of the city are going to commit to doing to making Portland more walkable. These are just a few of the strategies. I think there are nearly 70 strategies in our toolbox. So things like providing more frequently opportunities for marked crossings, separating vehicle turning movements from pedestrian crossing phasings, revamping our sidewalk repair program, providing more street and sidewalk lighting, which is something we heard as a key priority from our Walking While Black focus groups. So, as I mentioned, that public review draft will be coming out in a matter of a couple of weeks. Again, we would be really excited to have whatever comments you have as a body, and we're aiming to take the product to City Council in late spring. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have right now.
Thanks, Michelle, and thank you for keeping that brief so we had some time for questions. So are there any questions or comments that we have for the team? Of course, I'm like looking at Chris.
Well,
no,
I'm
he's
just
always
gonna,
a great lead.
I'm just going to say great work. I really don't have any questions. You've done a great job explaining it. I've had a chance to read the documents. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike. And then
Well,
Eli.
yeah, just one comment. An educational hint is that I have found myself fighting. I'm an aggressive pedestrian, and it's amazing to me how few people realize that every corner is actually a crosswalk. And I think that's like a non-structural, relatively inexpensive way that we need to start working on Vision Zero. Educating motorists.
Eli.
Yeah, great work. And when this comes back to us, I need a little education, maybe from staff, on how often Title 33 references these PED designations, if at all, and whether, like, once something's designated with one of these pedestrian classifications, I don't know what ripple effects that has in terms of transportation design expectations when frontage improvements get required, or land use proposals alongside it. So maybe that could just be part of the follow-up. And I had one question, which is, raw math, like $4 million a mile comes to about like $750 a linear foot, which is more than the cost of a half street improvement per city's proxy. And it makes me just wonder. I'm not going to go into number detail because I don't have the information to do it, but is there a way to do sidewalks for a lot less? If you're just doing the sidewalk, you're not also doing the curb, the engineering, all the other stuff. And I don't know whether that's part of the something being contemplated for areas that are sidewalk poor. So it seems like that number strikes. It's not just getting the sidewalk for that number. You're probably getting some other stuff too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. A couple of responses. So the 7 million a mile or 4 million a mile is kind of a median. So it also factors in the cost of providing sidewalks where they're much more expensive, like in Southwest, where we have to provide a lot of stormwater and there are a lot of terrain issues. So that median price is higher than you might experience elsewhere in the city. But yes, so that pedestrian toolbox will include some strategies for lower cost sidewalks or alternative sidewalks to help provide walking paths where we just can't swing, $4+ million a mile for sidewalks. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions? Perhaps it's just my older eyes these days, but and where I'm going is your toolbox of lighting is, to me, it's just like I can't tell you how many times everybody in this town wears dark black rain jackets, and it's just really hard when it's dark in the morning and then in the evening, as well as perhaps there's just some side piece of education to pedestrians of brighter clothing would be really great. Well, maybe we need to pay like North Face to start making more yellow jackets. I don't know, but great work. So I want to thank you for coming and giving the briefing. It looks like Chris wanted to
just to clarify process, is this coming back to us or is this going straight to council now? I know there's a public comment period and of course we can comment during that, but are you planning to be back here?
I'd want to talk to the chair about that. So we will be taking public comment and revising. So if you want me to come and share our revised draft, I'm happy to talk about that with you. So yeah.
So we could look over schedule. I think part of it, we were going to get a feel for kind of where our questions, our comments, or our concerns were. Right now, I'm hearing a lot of support. It would certainly, at a minimum, be great to get a memo, whether we have time in the schedule to have kind of a briefing about where you're at. But I think the intent is generally for us to provide our comments, whether we do it as a commission or just individuals within your process, and then look to city council as the next step. Is that correct?
Yes, sounds good.
If the thing I mentioned could be in that memo, would be great because I don't know the implications from this on other land use stuff.
And that could just even be a follow-up email if that's easy, Michelle.
Yep, I can do that.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thanks. Great work. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming today.
Okay, and so a lot more public involvement is yet to be had for the final comments. So that information will be on pedpdx.com where our really cool videos are, and I encourage members of the public to take a look at pedpdx.com. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that reminder. Next item on the agenda is the bike parking code briefing. And I'm just going to, since again we're running a little bit behind here, maybe ask commissioners as we get to question periods at the end, and especially since we're going to see this code work now multiple times here in the next month and a half, that we maybe kind of provide our questions as a list of questions for follow-up, and think of it that way. Welcome.
Is that on? Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. A little bit closer. Okay, great. So we're excited to be here today to talk about the Bicycle Parking Code Update Project. My name is Sarah Figliozzi with Portland Bureau of Transportation.
And I'm Liz Horman with the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
We also have a number of our colleagues who have also contributed quite significantly in the room. Some of them are here, but just to name a few, we have Sarah Wright, Phil Nemeny, Tyler Bump, Eric Engstrom from the Bureau of Planning and Services, as well as our colleagues Bria Bike-Salas, Grace Jeffries from the Bureau of Development Services. We've been working closely with the Bureau of Housing, with Jesse Connor and Suzanne Zuniga, and then our own Mauricio Leclerc from PBOT. So we just want to make sure. And they're here to answer any questions you might have. The goal of this project is to update the bicycle parking requirements for new projects and redevelopment. Most of those requirements are found in Title 33266. It's our Parking, Loading, Transportation Demand Management chapter. For today's briefing, I'm going to start us off. I'm going to provide a little bit of a background, some policy context, a little bit in terms of what those initial problems we wanted to solve, some bike parking 101. And then I'm going to hand it over to Liz. And Liz is going to talk about the engagement, and she's going to go into the specifics of the proposals in front of you. So just a reminder, we were in front of you about a year ago, October of 2017. And at that time, we came and we briefed you on the concepts that came out of our Stakeholder Advisory Committee. So since then, we've been working with our partners, working through those concepts, your feedback, the feedback that we got from the public, and really code implementation challenges. And the result of that work are the documents in front of you. So just really quickly, you have the staff report and the strike through Title 33 language. You also have a summary of appendices, and so there's those 4 documents that support this work. We're not going to go into the details in this briefing, but we're more than happy to answer those questions. And then the third document that you have is this green one-pager. And so Liz is going to be using this as she walks through the highlight of the major proposals. So just a reminder of the broader policy context that this project fits into. As this group knows very well, Portland has several policy and planning documents that set goals around climate change and transportation, and that this project specifically addresses. In addition, Portland has adopted policies and actions that speak specifically to the bicycle parking and bicycle parking requirements in private development. So the comp plan includes making sure there's requiring spaces for different types of bikes, and also making sure that there's spaces for persons with different levels of ability. And these goals are significant because we know that the city is growing, right? We know that we've got 500,000 new residents arriving here, but we're trying to accommodate them by 2040. And this growth is going to set challenges in terms of road capacity and congestion, specifically if our auto trip trends continue at the rate they currently are. And so to address this, PBOT is very focused on how we can use our streets most efficiently, and specifically thinking about how we can ensure shift and encourage Portlanders to shift the shorter trips to walking and biking. And the good news is that we know in the region, 45% of all auto trips are 3 miles or less. We know that these shorter trips are the easiest ones to shift to biking. And really, it's this shifting that's going to be able to free up some of the capacity on our roads, again, for freight, for the longer trips, and for those commute trips that need to happen by car. The other point that I want to make is just household cost savings. We know that transportation is the second highest household cost in Portland, and we know that biking, if it's made convenient, has that opportunity to have cost savings. So for all these reasons, PBOT is investing in our bicycle network, making sure that it's extensive, that it's safe, and that it's comfortable. But we need to recognize that even the safest and the most comfortable of bike infrastructure will not convince 25% of Portlanders to bike if they don't have a place to put their bike at the end of their trip. And so for that reason, we need to recognize that bike parking is equally as important as the bike infrastructure that we're putting on the ground. We also want to recognize the role that bike parking in private development will play in achieving our mode split goals. So the projects that will house Portland's new 500,000 residents provide major opportunities to impact that mode choice. And while location is absolutely important, we also know that the design of these new mixed-use projects has a significant effect on how convenient and in many cases how feasible it is for those residents to use their bike on a daily basis and for their daily needs. So for those reasons, we think it's important to recognize that these new buildings will shape bicycle use for decades to come, and that we need to highlight the role that the private development will be playing in terms of achieving our climate goals, as well as encouraging alternatives to driving alone. This project has been several years in the making. I just want to highlight a couple of the problems that the challenges that we set out to fix initially. The first is that we knew that a review of this section there's been a long time coming. For the most part, this section as a whole hasn't been touched in 20 years. There has been some targeted updates in 2004 looking at short-term bike parking, and then in 2010, this body urged staff to take a look at how much bike parking was required for apartment dwellings. So we came back to you with that. But as a whole, the majority of the code and the majority of the amount of bike parking that's required for the various uses hasn't been touched, or basically it was written in the 90s. Portland was different in 1996, right? So the major thing is we've seen a major increase in cycling rates. So it's a 6-fold increase in commute mode split since then. As you can see on the right, many areas of the city see much higher rates of cycling, rates of 15 to 33% range of commute rates. And even with some of the highest rates of bicycling in the country, we require an extremely small amount of bike parking compared to our peer cities, most of whom have updated their codes in the last 5 years. We also know that the current bike security requirements are very weak. This is one of the things that we knew that we needed to fix immediately. It's not surprising that this was one of the top items that came out of our public outreach phase. And just really quickly, the photo here of that lone bike, that security scenario, so a rack outside with a security camera on it, that does meet our current security requirements for long-term bike parking, whether that be residential or commercial. And we know that's not adequate, particularly in terms of the level of theft that we're seeing today. Finally, current code requirements are fine for able-bodied Portlanders, right? Especially, those folks who are riding lightweight, two-wheeled, standard bikes. But we saw how it excludes many Portlanders' biking needs and really created obstacles for growing sectors such as family biking and e-bikes. So just to summarize, we definitely we have a lot of opportunities to make bicycling even better. And now really quickly, just a little bit of bicycle parking terminology. I'll keep this as short as possible, but please interrupt me if there's any questions or other things that I can answer here. So first off, for sites, we require two different types of bike parking. We require the short-term parking and we require long-term parking. Short-term parking is located outside. Its intended use are for visitors who aren't going to be spending that much time there. As such, it doesn't have security requirements. It also doesn't have any weather protection requirements. Our long-term bike parking is intended for apartment dwellers. It's intended for students. It's intended for workers, whether those be a line cook or a teacher or an office worker. Obviously, the security requirements are going to be much higher because they could be keeping their bike for 4 hours or it could be 4 weeks. Currently, long-term bike parking does have security requirements, but minimal, and weather protection requirements, currently only 50%. So those both short-term and long-term, they both have different sets of requirements based for their different needs. They're distinct. Just a quick note, the amount of required bike parking, it's based on the use category and not the zoning requirement. Also, the bike parking requirements are required to be on-site for the most part, both short-term and long-term. And obviously, required bike parking is distinct from the PBOT provided blue racks in the sidewalk or the bike corrals or rack encroachments, with the exception of the bicycle parking fund. And just finally, that bringing these bicycle parking code requirements, it's only relevant for new applications and obviously for non-conforming development under certain conditions. Are there any other questions bike parking related? Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to Liz.
Wait, go ahead, Liz.
Okay.
We'll
Great.
take questions at the end.
Okay, perfect. So now that Sarah has outlined the larger policy context and really the need for this project, I want to dive into those details of the actual code changes. But I want to start with just a little more background on the community engagement process and how the code concepts were developed and vetted for the proposed draft that you have. So as mentioned, we did start with a stakeholder advisory committee. We met for 18 months from February 2016 through August 2017. And this group was really tasked with framing the early code concepts, not with actual code language. So as you might imagine, with a varied stakeholder group that consisted of external stakeholders, but also internal bureau representation, there was not always unanimous agreement on every element. However, the proposals that you have in front of you today really try to balance the concerns we heard from developers, from users, as well as balance the realities of zoning code implementation. So the work with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee was really just the beginning of the code outreach process. Staff worked diligently during the code concept phase and during the discussion draft period to really vet the recommendations with as many stakeholders as possible. Staff conducted a number of online surveys. We did site visits, visiting office complexes, as well as a number of apartments and affordable housing developments. Did presentations at community organizations, business groups, as well as neighborhood associations, and had a lot of one-on-one conversations with developers, architects, affordable housing advocates, and others. And it was really out of these conversations that we heard some consistent themes that were the drivers for the proposals that I'm going to outline for you today. And then as you can see, with things like security, usability being top concerns, these what we heard was really aligned with some of these original sort of issues that we set out to address. So now I'm going to highlight some of the key proposals that are in the proposed draft. Again, you've got this one pager in front of you that has sort of the 19 major proposals, but I'm just going to go through the 9 that are bolded on that sheet in front of you. Also, full disclosure, so you can follow along. I'm not necessarily going in numerical order, but the numbers will correspond with your list, so you can follow as I go. So proposals 1 and 2 are both related to the required amounts of long-term and short-term bicycle parking. Again, we know that people are not going to bike if they don't have a place to park their bike at their destination, whether that be at work, whether that be at home, when they're running errands, out to the grocery store, or going out to a restaurant. And therefore, one of the biggest components of our project was to update all of those amounts for long-term and short-term bicycle parking. And again, most of these have not been touched in nearly 20 years. So for proposal 1, we know that the bicycle ridership is different depending on geography, and that currently more people commute via bicycle in the central city and our inner neighborhoods. And really looking to the future, while we anticipate an increase in people biking across the city, a number of our city plans, like the Transportation System Plan, have used these 5 pattern areas to set specific mode split goals for each pattern area, which then taken together can actually ensure that we meet our citywide mode split goal. Therefore, staff use the 5 pattern areas, as well as the designated bicycle districts within our bicycle plan, to develop a tiered system for the amounts of required bicycle parking. And that's demonstrated in this map, where Standard A encompasses the central city, our inner neighborhoods, and our gateway district, which is the bicycle district, and Standard B has the western and eastern neighborhoods, as well as the river pattern area. This tiered approach is not a new strategy. Actually, current code includes tiered standards for our multi-dwelling uses, where there's one rate for the central city and one rate for the rest of the city. And this strategy is looking to acknowledge that while there are different ridership rates, we'll still be proposing increases throughout the city. So for proposal 2, I just want to provide a general overview of the methodology we used for updating those amounts of required bicycle parking. Our table of required amounts includes nearly 30 different use categories and specific uses, so we're not going to dive into each of those today, but I do want to sort of generally give you the formula that we used. So for updating these amounts, we used a number of data points. For long-term, we used average square footage per employee, as well as our city's target commute mode split rates. For short-term bicycle parking, we used percentage of visitors, as well as our transportation system development charge person trip rates for those use categories, and then our city's target mode split for all trips across the city. So we plugged those data points into these 2 formulas, and we got the amounts for all of those use categories. So as an example, for long-term bicycle parking for office use, in Standard A, it would require 1 long-term space per 1,800 square feet of net building area. And as an example, in a 100,000 square foot office building in the central city, it would require 56 long-term bicycle parking spaces, which accommodates about 20% of the employees in that building to commute by bicycle. Compare this with our current code, where that same size office building is only required to have 10 long-term bicycle parking spaces, which only accommodates 3.5% of the employees commuting by bike. So just, again, to put the requirements in a little more perspective and context, this graph shows some newer existing office buildings that are located within the central city and inner neighborhoods, and compares our current code requirement in blue, the proposed code requirement in red, and then how many bicycle parking spaces were actually provided in these projects. And again, this is just to highlight the context of our proposed baseline standards with our current code. So this next proposal, proposal number 11, is regarding the security standards for long-term bicycle parking. And again, we heard directly from Portlanders that bike theft was really one of their top concerns when it came to bicycle parking. And that we know nearly 2,500 bikes are reported stolen every year, but that is about, the guess is that's about a quarter of what are really stolen. So this is a growing problem in Portland. So as a result, our proposal looks to remove some of the weaker standalone provisions in current code, like being within 100 feet of an attendant, or an outdoor rack that can rely solely on a security camera, like Sarah showed earlier. And we really wanted to put the emphasis that long-term bicycle parking should be in a restricted access area, room, or enclosure. So the proposal does develop two sets of security requirements, one for residential uses and one for all other uses. And this recognizes that that the security needs are different in a residential building, where bicycle parking may act more as storage because somebody might not be using that bike every day, and that it requires more security and a dedicated space for bicycle parking. This is opposed to an office building or a retail shop, where those employees will need their long-term bicycle parking for their 4 to 10-hour shift. And co-locating bicycle parking with staff space on upper floors or in the lockable back small office area in a retail shop really do provide the appropriate level of security. Proposal 14, this codifies standards for space-saving racks. Current code does limit the use of space-efficient racks. However, staff for over the last 5 or 6 years have been approving these types of racks. However, it's required that a developer go through an adjustment or modification process each time, which adds time and cost to a project. So this project gave staff the opportunity to reassess our spacing requirements for a number of configurations, including reducing those spacing needs for those vertical wall racks or those double decker racks to really maximize the space and increase the number of bikes that can fit within a similar amount of space. So the next two proposals, Proposal 8 and 9, are going to address key usability concerns. So while reducing spacing was important to streamline the code, it was equally as important that proposals were included to ensure that bicycle parking was usable for all people and for all types of bicycles. Not everyone who bikes can actually lift their bike up onto a wall-mounted rack. Likewise, bikes like tricycles, like long-tail bikes, even types of e-bikes can actually fit on those types of racks. And therefore, the Proposal 8 requires a minimum percentage of horizontal floor-mounted racks so everyone doesn't need to lift their bicycle onto a wall rack. The second piece, Proposal 9, requires that a small percentage of racks accommodate a larger bicycle parking space, which will fit bikes like recumbents, tricycles, hand cycles, and more family-style bikes, which again, we're seeing an increase in these types of bikes in Portland, and they'll need a place to park. Proposal 3 lists the locations and the location options for where long-term bicycle parking may be provided. And while staff during our site visits have observed that ground floor roll-up bicycle parking really are the most used, the unique context of different development does call for a level of flexibility of where to locate long-term bicycle parking. And therefore, this proposal outlines sort of several options of where long-term bicycle parking can be placed within a building on a site. So still addressing this location requirements of long-term bicycle parking, Proposal 4 sets a requirement that a percentage of long-term bicycle parking in residential buildings must be located in a bike room rather than in a residential dwelling unit. So our current code allows all long-term bicycle parking to be placed within racks within an individual dwelling unit. But we've heard that this has resulted in a number of challenges for users. So first, people are reporting losing their damage deposits because they're bringing their wet and muddy bicycle up into their unit and it's causing damage in their unit. We're also seeing instances where racks are being placed in very unusable locations. These pictures, and I can confirm from site visits, we're seeing bicycle parking racks literally hung right next to the bed and in the bedroom. And so somebody, again, if you're a daily bike commuter, you're wheeling your wet, muddy bike through your apartment and then sleeping right next to it, which I don't know about you, it's not really where I want my daily commuter bike to be. We also heard in our surveys an overwhelming preference that users want to be able to park in a bike room as opposed to a rack in their unit. And it wasn't just from residents. We talked to property managers that have shared their perspective that they are being asked to remove racks from units that aren't getting replaced, building damage that's again caused by these in-unit racks, and then an overcrowding of their bike rooms because users prefer to use those small common bike rooms as opposed to the rack that's in their unit. And it's really for all these reasons that most other U.S. cities do not allow bicycle parking within a unit or on a balcony to count towards required bicycle parking in their codes. However, during code development process, staff heard loud and clear from developers as well as some architects that requiring all the bicycle parking to be outside the unit had a significant impact on the usability of space within their projects, and thus impacted development costs. And so therefore, the proposal is to allow up to 20% of required long-term bicycle parking to be provided within a dwelling unit, with the rest to be provided in bike rooms, on the ground floor, on individual floors, or wherever those fit. So the final proposal, Proposal 5, addresses some of the unique challenges related to building affordable housing. During the discussion draft outreach process, PBOT staff met with affordable housing developers, as well as had a number of meetings with the Portland Housing Bureau to discuss questions and concerns around how the project proposals were going to impact affordable housing throughout Portland. And while, again, there was a recognition on how the project fits with the city's broader transportation goals and and the need to provide affordable transportation options for residents, there were concerns on how to balance these objectives with the overwhelming need for affordable housing, and especially regulated affordable housing in the city. And during these conversations, one of the constant themes that we heard was, again, that spatial impact related to the requirement that limits the number of required bicycle parking that can be placed in a residential unit. And we especially heard a lot about the unique funding circumstances of regulated affordable housing, and where very stringent requirements tied to funding often conflict on a project and create barriers to projects getting on the ground. And then we also heard that unlike in a market rate project, where a situation where a project might need to reduce the size of a unit or eliminate a unit because of fitting in all of the various zoning code requirements may actually result in a project not happening. And so therefore, staff working with the Portland Housing Bureau developed these two exceptions, the in-unit standard, to address these concerns and to mitigate the impacts on deeper affordability projects and projects on smaller sites. And so really across these two proposals, Proposal 4 and 5, related to the in-unit allowance, we were looking to really provide a balance between developer concerns as well as our overall policies to accommodate growth and to support active modes of transportation. So that kind of concludes my overview of those key proposals. Again, in the interest of time, I didn't want to go through all 19 that we have in front of you, but we'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any on that summary list. And just to quickly highlight, there are some proposed amendments to other chapters or sections in Title 33. So those were in the sort of the last piece of the proposed draft that you have in front of you. So the next step, we'll be back here on January 22nd at 5 p.m. for a public hearing. And that concludes our presentation. I know we've presented in what seems like a lot of small, little tiny details about bicycle parking, but we know and we've heard that it's really these details that can make a big difference in whether people decide to bike or not. So again, thank you so much. We've got our colleagues in the back that can jump in as well. We'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So just as a reminder, looking at time, I think what I'd like to do is, again, just try to maybe present your questions as a list, and then if you wouldn't mind following up with us, ideally before the hearing, kind of in a memo with a follow-up to our questions, that'd be fabulous. So with that, we can just go around. Chris is ready to roll, so go for it, Chris.
Thank you. I've been on a 5-year journey with staff on this and the stakeholder committee, and appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. I want to call out a couple things. One, for my fellow commissioners who've been focused on RIP, this code does apply to triplexes and quadplexes built under RIP, so something to be aware of. It doesn't apply to single family and duplex as written. We talked about, there's a memo from Tyler about the cost of doing this. I'm equally interested in the cost of not doing this. it's not sufficient to just build bikeways. We also have to have end-of-trip facilities. And if we don't build adequate bicycle parking, we won't hit the mode share goal. And I'd be interested in a memo from somebody like Peter Hurley saying, if the city doesn't hit 25% bike mode share, where does that show up in roadway costs, additional transit costs? Because there's I am certain a big dollar price tag if we don't make this work. Some things I want to call out for our discussion. The idea of the geographic tiers, there's an equity argument that can be made both ways on that, and I hope we'll spend some quality time discussing that. But I really want to focus in on this issue of in-unit bike storage. Other cities do not do it. It's a strange artifact of our code because we didn't specifically prohibit it in the 90s, and we got into kind of a habit of doing this. But I'm going to put Sarah on the spot here. So you've been doing bike parking for a long time. Do you believe that in-unit bike parking is a tool that's actually going to help fuel our 25% mode share goal?
No.
No. So what we're essentially doing is reducing our requirements by 20% and saying you only have to build 80% of what's really needed to make things happen. So I hope we will spend some quality time talking about that. And in particular, I want to highlight the affordable housing exemption because I think what we are doing there is just providing substandard bicycle parking for the households that need access to affordable transportation the most. So that's probably the single thing in this proposal that troubles me the most. We'll certainly be talking about that. And I've already talked with staff about a number of smaller technical amendments that we'll get to in due process. But I really want to highlight that in-unit parking issue because I think it's a critical one to the success of this plan. Thank you.
Ben, do you have anything? You don't have to, just if you do.
And this is for the follow-up. I've noticed that the standards were developed using a 15% commute mode split, and while the Stakeholder Advisory Committee was meeting and did quite a bit of work, sounds like in that time the TSP actually changed the commute mode split to 25%. And I see you have a list of bullet points. Maybe as a follow-up, if you can articulate a little bit more how confident you are that the 15% approach is good moving forward, since this is a long-range plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for including e-bikes in there because I use my e-bike a lot, and they are hard. You can't take them on. They're heavy. They're so heavy, and so everything that you said was true. One of the things that I'm hoping you're looking at is also people are going to want to plug them in their long-term place. So is that part of the requirements? A plug-in?
Oh, plug in.
Yeah.
Alan. No, we do not have electric plugs as part of the requirements.
Should.
And
Have them in the discussion draft.
Yeah, and so in reviewing sort of the options with BDS and implementation, there were implementation questions that arose around requiring electrical outlets and sort of that crossing over into building code and electrical code, and really concerns on how we would implement that as part of zoning code. So we removed them because of those implementation concerns. However, I do want to mention that we are going to be digging into similar questions with a project that BPS is doing on electrical vehicle plugins. And so the decision was made to, since we're going to be asking those questions during that time, we can include the e-bikes in that to look at how we would address implementation and zoning code with some of these that cross over to building code.
Yeah, because it's
So I'm
the
going to
funny
jump in to encourage everybody else to have a chance to ask
Oh,
questions.
okay.
Let's make sure that we write that down as a point for further discussion when we go into deliberation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Katie.
I did one more just question is, have you considered in your two-tier, and I agree with Chris that we need to talk about that, but also even if you keep the two-tier, if the one tier, the higher tier or whatever it is, would include all of the trains, the max stations, because if you're going to raise the amount of biking that's going on in East Portland, they're going to be wanting to park at the max stations.
Jeff?
Mm,
Oh, sorry. Thanks.
two quick questions, and you can tell me right now if the answers are in this material, because I have not done a good enough job of reading through your stuff. I will before the public hearing. One, have you got any historical data showing how the mode split has changed over since it became a goal of the city?
That's not in. It's not actually in these.
Okay, then it can be a question that you
Yes.
can follow up on. Okay, and then the second one is you showed a chart that showed a lot of the newer buildings, and I wasn't sure if they're office buildings or multifamily, are actually providing more parking than this requires. I also read something that said there are buildings where I guess the owners and managers are saying the parking is not being utilized. So I'm wondering if there's any data you can present that shows utilization of existing parking.
So we do in the appendices have some information on some of the site visits we've done, but we can follow up with the additional information from some of the site visits because we visited offices as well as apartments.
Yeah.
And again,
Rather than
what we're
anecdotally,
seeing,
have you compiled it into a usage conclusion or usage data?
Again, I mean, it is difficult to do
Right.
a usage across the board. We can provide some of the data that we've read on
Thank
that,
you.
but yeah.
I can wait.
On the geographic, my question is, first, I support Katie to look at around transit, but in the longer term, is there a plan to transition to A, from B to A, from areas, or does B always stay B? Affordable housing, the concern there is how do you transition the affordable housing to, especially in the areas of B, to higher mode splits if you're lowering, so some concept of that. The in-unit, it just seems to me that this is a common sense, and if you can't use it, why provide it? But is there an approach to common sense in that in-unit versus a regulatory, like if you just can't use it as proposed by a developer? And then the cost, I am interested in the cost of the proposal versus the cost of not doing it, as Chris has proposed, because I'm sure we're going to hear it's going to cost a lot, but what's the cost of not doing it in a global sense in terms of CO2 and mode splits and a lot of other things as we look at transportation costs and trying to, when you look at housing affordability today, transportation costs are included in those housing affordability. So what's the cost of not providing that option for someone in an affordable housing unit from that standpoint? So that's it.
I just have a clarifying question, and I also haven't had a chance to go through this, so I'm sorry if it's right in front of me or if you went over it while I was in the bathroom, but is this just for new construction?
It's for new construction and then as well non-conforming development under certain circumstances. Okay. So for the most part, short-term requirements do apply across the board. And then for long-term bike parking requirements, they would kick in if the project meets the major redevelopment category. And then, or if that project has surface parking on site.
Okay.
And those details are in the proposals. They'll be near the back because they're in the non-conforming chapter.
My one concern is, low-income Portlanders who, if they want to stay in the city, can only live in like naturally occurring affordable housing. I would love for those folks to also have this type of encouragement to bike. And that just feels like a big gap.
Eli?
Thanks. I'm going to share Chris's concern on the affordable housing question, that exemption, and leave more time for that later. I've done some developments in the RM1, RM2 sort of density and think that there's some technical amendments that might be helpful there. Some's already being addressed in those code projects, but there's one building code, maybe at the building code loop, of having a bike storage room attached to another structure makes it a mixed occupancy building. You suddenly have to sprinkle in a project unit wouldn't have to otherwise sprinkle. So it's a building code thing, I know, but if there's a linked project, there might be some follow-up work there to do. And I guess the integration with residential infill project, I think that project might redefine what multi-dwelling means, which could have implication for this project. So looping those together would be nice. And I think I'll leave. Oh, and I'm also into the transit center thing, having traveled in the Netherlands and Germany, and you see these huge structures for bike parking. And with this code update, maybe it's time to start thinking about where they fall in the regulatory landscape. We don't get those. We don't build those here yet. But I got some sort of questions on that. But the other stuff I think will in the realm of technical amendment questions. I'll follow up by email.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And mine's going to piggyback on a few comments. We're going to have a heated discussion on in-unit, it sounds like. So an additional piece of follow-up information might be, and if you don't have it, I can be helpful in providing it, is when it's done well in-unit. You showed a great picture of where it doesn't make sense at all, but I think there are examples of when it can work, and so the conversation would be, how do we make sure that where it works, like how do we get that to actually happen all the time if it's going to be in-unit? I also will need to read the non-conforming code piece. I'm a little bit concerned about future buildings getting renovated, more so on the office side of it. And that's a concern I've heard from building owners. Like, what if we start triggering these requirements down the road? So I guess I need to get my head into what's happening in that section and when it might trigger that. And I might have some follow-up questions. Or if you already have information or thoughts on that you suspect I might be going down the road on, go ahead and send it along. Okay. And then last but not least, my ears perked up with the affordable piece, and I find I'm going to need more information. It seems curious and unfortunate at this point. I mean, I get we're trying to balance all these competing goals, but it absolutely seems of all places that's where we need to make sure that we can accommodate bikes. So we'll be looking for more information on that. That's all I have. We are running late, so I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Looking forward to our hearing, which is scheduled for, can you remind me again?
The 22nd.
Our next meeting.
Okay.
So that's January 22nd, and that's in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, our work session will be following that. So thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.